It is relatively easy to discuss about the recorded period, which is considered as a historical period. On the other hand, it is extremely difficult to arrange the pre-recorded period about which no texts are available. I had to introduce a number of new concepts and subjects without which it is impossible to arrange the pre-recorded past of India. My primary aim is to arrange the prescript or prehistorical period of India. It is extremely interesting to note that even during the prescript period, there were languages which provided immense information about the events of those periods. It is essential that we identify those languages and make an effort to decipher the meaning of each. Animal symbol and color code are two such very interesting languages. Each animal symbol represented a human fraternity. Once again, I would like to express my gratitude to Sangam Talks for giving me this platform to discuss about the pre-recorded period of India and that of the world. As I have discussed in my previous lecture, I have authored a book titled India in Egypt. This book establishes an intense connectivity between the Indian and the Egyptian civilizations. In fact, evidences strongly suggest that the Egyptian civilization was developed by the Indian origin people. This concept may appear unbelievable at this stage because our history textbooks do not talk about this. In fact, for whatever reason, our history completely ignores these evidences and presents a narrative which does not fit with the available ground evidences of India. There is a need to study our ground evidences extensively and arrange our pre-recorded period or prehistorical period narrative, accommodating those ground evidences. Let me give you an example. We find Aboriginal tribes in the Andaman Islands, but we do not seriously think who are these people or how did they reach there? And more importantly, what happened to their descendants? It is obvious that they came from Africa and reached Andamans. It is likely that their descendants eventually populated India. These important ground evidence of their presence is completely ignored when we arrange the origin of the people of India. Is it possible that a large number of various tribes living south of the Vindhya Parbat are their descendants? Once we start thinking in this line, the popular concept, India is a melting pot, and that they came from different directions needs to be reviewed. Is it a Western concept imposed on us? Because ground evidences suggest otherwise, that pre-glacial period anatomical modern humans like Andaman tribes lived in India since a much earlier period, much before they settled in Europe and rest of Asia. In all likelihood, descendants of Andaman tribes populated India. We have to incorporate scientific information which has emerged in the last couple of decades, especially in genetics and archaeology. To prepare the contents of the book India in Egypt, I have compiled information from all possible scientific sources, as well as from our ancient texts like the Rig Vedas. In the process, a completely new picture of the possible pre-recorded period of India has emerged. It took me 20 years of extensive exploration of every corner of the Indian subcontinent to collect evidences. It was a marathon exercise to arrange the events in the right sequence to understand the entire process. I published a number of books documenting my experience of exploration, as it is important to establish the new narrative with authentic evidences. It appears that the Indian origin people had traveled to the Mediterranean coast, Egypt and Greece about 10,000 years ago with their language and culture. They remained in touch with India. Over a period, they established civilizations at Sumer, Mesopotamia, Egypt and Greece. At a later date, they returned to India due to different reasons and over a period of time. This is referred to as the reverse migration of the Indian origin fraternities in this book. In fact, reverse migration by land route took place earlier than by the sea route. The reverse migration of the Indian origin fraternities by sea route took place much later and continued till very recently. Both these processes could be arranged as a number of evidences of both the processes are available all over the country. I have discussed in my previous episode about how we are arranging the available evidences in India to establish how antique our civilization is. It is relatively easy to discuss about the recorded period, which is considered as a historical period. On the other hand, it is extremely difficult to arrange the pre-recorded period about which no texts are available. I had to introduce a number of new concepts and subjects without which it is impossible to arrange the pre-recorded past of India. My primary aim is to arrange the prescript or prehistorical period of India. Understanding the events of this period would immensely help us to understand the recorded historical events. Today, we do not have a clear idea about why Chandragupta Maurya could not capture a portion of eastern coastal India, eventually where Ashoka fought a bloody war popularly known as Kalinga War. Our history starts from the written edicts of Ashoka, but we do not know with whom he fought that war because we do not have any historical record in India about the prehistoric militarily powerful Gongaridi kingdom of the region. New concepts which I have introduced in the book India in Egypt includes effect of glacial and interglacial periods, emergence and submersion of the Bengal glacial coastal shelf, significance of animal symbols, trans-Himalayan migration pivoting Mount Kailash, spread of matriarchal culture from India, reverse migration by land and sea routes from Egypt and Europe, genetic evidences of onward and reverse migrations, and Gongaridi, the ancient Indian kingdom. I request you all to go through my previous episode on India in Egypt, uploaded by Sangam Talks on 28th April 2023 first, before you make an attempt to follow and understand this episode. We have touched upon each of the above points, though very briefly in that episode. Today, I shall be discussing only about the significance of animal symbols seen all over India and also all over the world a little more elaborately. It is extremely interesting to note that even during the prescript period, there were languages which provided immense information about the events of those periods. It is essential that we identify those languages and make an effort to decipher the meaning of each. Animal symbol and color code are two such very interesting languages. Each animal symbol represented a human fraternity. It is clear that this language of animal symbol was developed by Indian origin people during their stay in India. As they migrated to the distant lands, these animal symbols also reached distant settlements. In this image of Majuli Island, Assam, we find two indigenous animal symbols, elephant and mogor, and a reverse migration animal symbol, lion, depicting a historical ethnic confrontation. Here, reverse migration lion fraternity is taking help of elephant fraternity to challenge the mogor fraternity. Thus, this complex culture depicts a historical event described through prescript animal symbol language. It clearly describes an ethnic conflict which took place in the region. It is possible that it is actually depicting the ethnic equation during the Kalinga War or political situation during the visit of Megasthenes to Gongaridi. It is also possible that it is depicting a period where Maurya Empire is changing from elephant leadership to lion leadership, eventually resulting in lion on top of Ashoka pillar. We have never attempted to decipher this animal symbol language so far. Once we take this subject seriously, we will be able to decode many such images created in our various archaeological structures and temples. In fact, it may even help us to decode the Indus Valley script as well, as it is full of animal symbols. In other words, it is difficult to decode Indus Valley civilization script till we understand the meaning of animal symbols. Animal symbols are also associated as the Bahuns or associates of the Indian deities. In fact, they are often associated with Egyptian and Greek deities as well. We find Isis having avian wings and Horus having eagle face. Similarly, Athena of Greece is associated with Naga, owl, horse, and avian wings. It is quite possible that each of these animal symbols actually represented a human fraternity who worshipped respective deities. It is amazing that we do not even make any effort to understand the meaning of these animal symbols, though it is so widespread all over India. Every deity is associated with an animal symbol. Every river goddess is associated with an animal symbol. Many of the royal families associate themselves with various specific animal symbols. Interestingly, it's not a local subject, but they are seen in the archaeological structures all over the world. We do not even think that why such a global subject is so closely associated with the Indian civilization. Moreover, we find some of the animal symbols which are not Indian in origin, like images of lion and horse, which are also commonly seen all over the Indian subcontinent. There has to be a meaningful explanation for this animal symbol distribution. This is what we see in front of the Sun Temple Konarak. Clearly, at that juncture in this region, reverse migration lion fraternity dominated over the elephant fraternity. India is a unique territory and is completely different from any other part of the world. As the anatomical modern human lived in India continuously for 65,000 years, Indian origin people perfected their culture over a long period. Unlike other territories where well-formed civilizations spread from India in the last 10 to 20, 12,000 years ago. Most probably, the Indian origin people spread about 10 to 12,000 years ago during the post-glacial period and spread the civilization in other part of the world. A number of pre-script languages formed in India, which eventually spread to the rest of the world. In this Durga image, there is so much of information, but nothing is written in script. Here we observe an understanding being established between the matriarchal and patriarchal communities. Two of the patriarchal communities, elephant and peacock, represented by Ganesha and Kartik, have joined Durga to form her allied force, while she is destroying the emerging patriarchal community represented by the Asura. Several animal symbols suggest which community each of these deities belong to. Finally, their color code suggests which territory did each of them belong to. Presently, animal symbols are not given adequate importance. They are merely treated as a totem. By definition, totem means several animal and natural symbols which are given importance by the primitive fraternities or ancient tribes. That's a perfect way of dealing with an Indian subject by the Europeans. But why can't we see that animal symbols are not restricted only within the tribes of India? We find them associated with almost all the archaeological structures. Moreover, a number of animal symbols have been created at various strategic corners in the Kailash temple of Ellora, including 4 lions on top of the temple. And these temple has nothing to do with the tribals. In the Sun Temple of Konarak also, we find horse, lion, elephant, and even giraffe. Here in this mural on the Konarak temple, we see a team of women mounted on an elephant is receiving a foreign team of women mounted on giraffe. Women mounted on elephant possibly suggests an indigenous matriarchal community, and women mounted on giraffe represents a reverse migration matriarchal community from East Africa. Various animal symbols like nag, deer, elephant, goose have been associated with Buddha and Buddhism. We find elephant on top of the Ashoka edict of Dholi, and finally lion on top of the Ashoka pillar. I'm sure you will not consider them as tribal symbols. It is possible that the tribal people started to use these animal symbols because they originated in the Indian civilization at that time. But its use continued thereafter as well as in a more significant manner. They mean something. It is a language. In fact, it's a global language as we find animal symbols all over the world in different forms, including in royal insignia and in country flags. Animal symbols may serve as an invincible Indian force which can win the whole world for India. It can easily establish that various ethnic fraternities spread from India in different ancient civilizations. We are all brothers and sisters. It is high time that we, with a scientific mind, give more importance to this language. Scientific scholars need to collect more and more data about all of them from all over the world to arrange them with the help of statistics, and that will be acceptable to the scientific community of the world. Animal symbols like lion and horse possibly originated in areas like the Mediterranean coast, Egypt, and Central Asia. They were adopted by the Indian origin fraternities, but outside India during their stay at a region where these animals were commonly found. As the Indian origin fraternities returned to India, they introduced these foreign animal symbols in the Indian architecture. Their presence in the Indian civilization clearly establishes the validity of the reverse migration of the Indian origin fraternities back to India.
A number of animal images are seen in every archaeological structure in India and in all the ancient civilizations of the world. It is unlikely that they serve a decorative purpose only. In all probability, animal symbols like naga, tiger, lion, elephant, fish, turtle, primate each represented a human fraternity in the ancient period. When two such fraternities united to form a fusion fraternity, it was represented by a fusion animal image. These fusion animal images are not understood and are generally described as mythical images because no such animal exists in nature. A winged lion image, possibly representing an ethnic fusion of lion and avian fraternities, is seen in India, Greece, and Egypt. It establishes its widespread distribution in three ancient civilizations of the world. This symbol was created in Greece and Egypt 2000 to 5000 years ago, which has remained in archaeological structures as images frozen in time. However, in India, such images were created till very recently. Another fusion animal image seen in the Narmer palette of Egypt has the face of a tiger, neck of a serpent or naga, and body of a primate. Naga, Bag, and Primate were the three early Indian origin fraternities which migrated to distant lands. As the Narmer palette image signify the union of Upper and Lower Egypt by Narmer, the first king of Egypt, this image suggests that it was established by an union of three Indian origin fraternities. Another interesting composite animal image in Majuli Island, Assam, shows features of the elephant, lion, avian, and horse swallowing a fish. These possibly depict formation of an allied force to destroy the ruler of a territory represented by the fish. Several newer AMH fraternities originated in India and they adopted various animal images as their ethnic symbols. The coastal dweller fraternities identified themselves with the naga, fish, turtle, and goose symbols, while the forest dwellers or the hunter-gatherers identified themselves with the naga, bag, primate, elephant, and owl symbols. It is possible to arrange the animal symbols meaningfully, establishing their interpersonal relationships. It appears that these animal symbols served as vahuns of the Indian deities belonging to various fraternities. In the Egyptian civilization, however, deities are seen with their heads replaced by the head of the animal to which fraternity the deity belonged. Over a period, Naga-descended fraternities adopted the fish and avian symbols. Indian origin fraternities often adopted newer animal symbols to represent a transformed fraternity in a distant land. The tiger fraternity adopted the lion image, and thus we find both the tiger and lion as the vahuns of Durga. I have drawn a flow chart to arrange the ancestry of various Indian origin fraternities and their respective descendants. Over a period of time, descendant of the fish fraternity adopted the ram and horse symbols. Interestingly, the horse fraternity was known as Osho fraternity And as they spread over many regions, the continent acquired the name Asia. As the Osho fraternity of two territories joined together during their reverse migration, they were known as Oshinis or Oshidoi, meaning two horses. Two horses forming a twin brother team is common in the iconography of many regions of Eurasia, including India. Finally, it is possible that during the matriarchal period, the fraternity adopted the feminine images as their ethnic identity, like the cow. As they adopted the patriarchal culture, they adopted the bull as their ethnic symbol. Both the cow and the bull are considered as sacred animals in India. Bull is also the Vahan of Shiva. A complex Vahan of goddess Ganga provided clues regarding the composition of various fraternities which migrated along the river during the matriarchal period. Image of Lamassu suggested that in the Assyrian Empire, the king was dependent on the bull and the avian fraternities. Similarly, a complex sculpture in Sri Lanka suggested that Osur fraternity emerged from the Naga and turtle fraternity, and they worshipped Shiva, the deity of the bull fraternity, and Saraswati, the deity of the avian fraternity. It took me many years of analysis and collection of photographs from not only all over Indian subcontinent, but also foreign territories like Egypt to understand and arrange the sequence of the process. It took me some time to understand the complexity of fusion fraternities. I had to scratch my head for years to understand the phases of matriarchal and patriarchal period and the subsequent alteration of the animal symbols. I feel that understanding the hierarchy of the animal symbols would help arrange the migration path of various human fraternities all over the world.
I'm repeatedly emphasizing on the fact that majority of the Indian origin fraternities originated on the Bengal coast. I have to now establish why I'm presuming such a concept. I have discussed this issue in my previous episode, but I have to tell you in short about the phenomena to establish why all the fraternities started their migration from the Bengal coast. If you notice, you will observe that major part of Bay of Bengal has shallow water. It is not called Bengal Sea, though area-wise it is quite comparable with many seas. It is called Bay, possibly because of its shallow depth. During every glacial period, when seawater recedes by 400 feet or 130 meters, this region surfaces above the sea level, producing a huge landmass. I've referred to this huge landmass between Bengal and Myanmar coast as the Bengal Glacial Coastal Shelf. A very unique phenomena takes place on this landmass every time when such a thing happens. Here, two genetic identities of Bengal and Myanmar coast intermix to produce new post-glacial period fraternities. These fraternities adopted various animal symbols as their ethnic identities during the last glacial period. At this juncture, this landmass gets connected with Andaman Archipelago, and newer fraternities walked into the Andaman Archipelago during that time. As their landmass submerges in phases, these fraternities got displaced and settled on the Bengal region. At this stage, many of them migrated along the rivers like Ganga, Jamuna, Kaligandaki, and Mahakali. Thus, majority of the Indian origin fraternities which adopted various animal symbols started their transcontinental journey from the Bengal coast. They eventually reached Mount Kailash, as all these rivers originate from there. This trans-Himalayan migration path bifurcated from Mount Kailash region. One path went westwards to Mesopotamia and Europe, while the other descended along the Indus to reach Makran coast, Sumer, and Egypt. Thus, Kailash even today is considered as a sacred place, not only by the Hindus, but also by the Buddhists, Sikhs, and Jains, who consider that this pivotal junction was a migration path of their ancestors. It is amazing to note that so many of the settlements, territories, rivers, various fraternities, and languages, names of kings and empires were named after Indian words. This is unlikely to be a coincidence. In fact, these phenomena establishes that they were named by the Indian origin fraternities who had settled all over these regions. Settlements like Baghdad, Hati, Osur, Crete from Kirata, Aswan from Osho, Ghazni from Gojo, territories like Gojo, Giza from Gaza, Caspian Sea from Kush, Mesopotamia and Macedonia from Masa, rivers, Tigris from Tiger, which is from Bag, Nile River was known as Kali River at one stage, various fraternities like Kushites, Kassites from Koch, Minion, Mycenaean from Masa, languages like Kushites from Kush, Tigran from Tiger, kings, Mines from Min, Hattusili from Hati, empire, Hittite empire from Hati, Rameses from Ram, Ram means Bheda, Bahan of Agni. My purpose of discussing all these issues with you is that I have collected only a few such names as examples. There may be thousands of other such names all over the ancient world, which would establish the hypothesis more statistically and thus more scientifically. I would like to show you one short video to establish that it is possible to trace the migration path of each Indian origin fraternities, which adopted various animal symbols as their ethnic identities and named various settlements after the animal symbol and thereby leaving a footprint.
It is interesting to note that surnames like Nag, Bagh or Baghila, Hati, Shingho or Singh, and Pakhi are still common in India, especially in Bengal. Similarly, we find fraternities like Mech and Koch in North Bengal. In all probability, Mech originated from Mach or Machi, meaning fish, and they belong to the fish fraternity. Similarly, Koch possibly originated from the word Kotchop or Kachua, meaning turtle. There are territories in Assam and Bengal like Kachar, Koch Bihar, Koch Hajo, and Kustia suggesting their settlements. It is most likely that these early human fraternities named their settlements after the animal symbols which represented their ethnic fraternities. As these fraternities migrated from the east coast of India, their migration path can be arranged. The migration path of Bagh fraternity can be traced from Bagdogra in North Bengal, ascending along Bagmati river and reaching Baglum Kali temple in Nepal, and finally Baghdad in Mesopotamia across Mount Kailash. A number of localities named after Bagh in Afghanistan like Baglam, Bagram, and so on. Baghdad is located on river Tigris, and the word Tigris originated from the word tiger or tigre. In many Eastern Indian languages, Bagh means tiger. Thus, both the city and the adjacent river are named after the same animal species, which possibly represented a human fraternity. Is it just a coincidence? Interestingly, it is only in India that tiger is known as Bagh. Similarly, it is possible to trace the migration path of the fish fraternity. Fish is the Bahun of Ganga, suggesting the onward migration of the fish fraternity from Ganga Ridhi along river Ganga from the east coast of India. We have Mechi Nodi and Mechi Kali in Nepal. We find territories like Mesopotamia, Masa of Turkey, Macedonia, and finally the Mycenaean civilization of ancient Greece. Koch or turtle fraternity migration path can be established from eastern India along river Jamuna of Bangladesh to reach Kailash. Incidentally, turtle is the Bahun of river Jamuna, suggesting its migration along the river. As one descends along Indus from Kailash, one reaches Kutch of Gujarat and Kutchi district of Balochistan. Following the Persian Gulf, one reaches the territory of Kassites in Mesopotamia, and finally the Koch fraternity emerges as Kushites in the Horn of Africa. It is possible that the Caspian Sea and Caucasus Mountains were so named as they were Koch fraternity settlements. Hati is one of the most successful Indian origin fraternities which spread all over the world. They named their settlements Hati and Hattusa in Turkey. Their king was Hattusili, and their kingdom was known as Hittite Empire. Their settlement along the Mediterranean coast was named Gojo, now famous as the Gaza Strip, and their settlement in Lower Egypt was named Giza, also from Gojo. As the Gojo fraternity was matriarchal in nature, their settlement in Afghanistan was known as Gajani. The Gangasagar Mela is held on Makar Sankranti Day on the east coast of India. Makar, or the elephant-headed fish, is the Bahun of Ganga, suggesting migration of this fusion fraternity along river Ganga. The Makran coast derived its name from the Makar fraternity settlement who takes care of the Mogor or crocodile. In the Horn of Africa, they were known as Makuria language speakers and their kingdom was known as the Makuria kingdom. Interestingly, many Nubian families of Egypt keep crocodile as a pet and draw crocodile in front of their house. These families possibly belong to the Makar fraternity. Pali language spread from India to the Mediterranean coast, Egypt and Greece. Their settlement was known as Palistan, now Palestine. On the other hand, spoken Sanskrit language spread to Anatolia and Europe. The same Indian origin fraternity settlements were known by different names in these two territories. The elephant fraternity settlement was known as Hati in Turkey and as Gojo or Giza in the Mediterranean coast and Egypt. Similarly, fish settlements were known as Mesopotamia, Masa, Motso, Macedonia and Mycenaean civilization in Europe, and they were known as the Meme fraternity in Egypt, who established the Minoan civilization in ancient Greece. Indian languages probably remained popular for several thousand years on the Mediterranean coast and around. Thus, when new fraternities like Singho and Osho formed there after several thousand years, they had Indian names. Osho means horse, Singho means lion in eastern India like in Bengal. I am told it is known as Simha in Sanskrit. It thus appears that Indian origin languages spread to distant lands as people settled there. Over a period, these languages became global. It seems that Indian origin people with their languages possibly established other ancient civilizations. Our humble mission is to investigate the ground evidences and scientific data in order to review our history and learn about it from an entirely new perspective.
It is extremely important to appreciate that Indian origin fraternities from India spread to distant lands with their language and culture. Thus, Indian languages remained popular there for several thousand years. In fact, the reverse migration fraternities brought back various dialects of Indian languages which were identified but could not be explained so far. Various dialects of Hindi returned to India with different reverse migration fraternities. Similarly, in Bangladesh, we find Bengali dialects in Chittagong and Sylhet that other Bengalis or even Bangladesh are unable to follow. Now that we have managed to establish the spread of the Indian origin fraternities on the Mediterranean coast, Egypt and Europe, we are in a position to understand and analyze the animal symbol chart. I started to analyze these animal symbols long ago, maybe 10 years back. Since then, I used to keep a photographic record of these images for future analysis. My challenge was, is it possible to arrange this global animal symbol language in a meaningful manner? Is it possible to arrange them like a flow chart? Who descended from which ancestor? Which original fraternity adopted which new animal symbol? How do we identify them in the Indian civilization? Which animal formed Bahun of which deity? We have to keep in mind that initially it was the matriarchal fraternity which migrated from India. As they adopted patriarchal culture, there was a need to change the animal symbol, for example, from cow to bull and so on. Here I'm discussing a major subject which is not there in the Wikipedia or even in Google. In fact, nobody possibly ever described this language before. On the other hand, it was extremely challenging to arrange them in this manner because the ramification of this subject extends not only to every corner of India, but to every corner of the world. They are found not only in the archaeological structures of the world, but also in the present day temple architecture, idols, and figurines. Majority of these Indian origin fraternities possibly originated on the Bengal-Myanmar coast during the last glacial period. It appears that there were a few primary fraternities which migrated from India, like the Naga, Bagh, Hanuman, Avian, Fish, Kotchop or Koch fraternity, and so on. I find a very close association between the Naga, Fish, and Avian fraternities. Though Fish fraternity retained their independent image, but they also gave rise to the Horse fraternity as their descendant. Turtle fraternity adopted the cow symbol during the matriarchal period as they migrated away from the coast into central India. They adopted the bull symbol as they adopted patriarchal culture. Bagh fraternity adopted lion image in Africa and Mediterranean coast. Hanuman fraternity adopted the name Molla as they were good wrestlers or Mollovids. Now you find so many territories and countries are named after these as they were settlements of the various Indian origin fraternities. We find various names associated with Molla like Mali, Malay, Maldives, Malaysia, Malwa of Rajasthan, Molla kings of Bengal and Nepal, and so on. I've just given one example. In this way, the whole world would get connected. In fact, Rig Veda mentions majority of these onward and reverse migration animal symbols. Animal symbols definitely need to be studied more seriously and with a lot of care. This subject itself can open a new door in understanding prehistoric human migration. It appears that till we understand the meaning of these animal symbols, it is even difficult to understand the description of Rig Veda as animal symbols are mentioned extremely frequently there. Once you understand the pure Indian origin fraternities who adopted a single animal images as their ethnic identity, I would like to describe a few fusion animal images. In many of the cases, Indian origin fraternities united with one another to form a more powerful and ethnic fraternity to survive in a foreign land and often to dominate a territory. Many of these fusion animal images formed in India. In one case, 9 matriarchal ethnic fraternities united to form a very powerful ethnic identity and adopted a completely new animal symbol, elephant, representing their immense strength. We see a folk image in India where 9 women are seen to form the shape of an elephant. This is popularly known as Navonari Kunjara. In this terracotta image, 4 women formed 4 legs of the elephant and 3 formed the body and 1 each formed head and tail. This suggested that 9 matriarchal fraternities united to form a strong fusion fraternity. Their settlements were known as Hati, Goju, Gojuni, and Hostinapur. It is possible that in the distant land they actually adopted patriarchal culture, as we see a white elephant Oirabad becoming the Vahan of Indra, the king of the Devatas. Elephant fraternity undoubtedly was the most powerful Indian origin fraternity which ruled in various regions of the world. As we have discussed, Hittite Empire was formed by the Hatti fraternity. Their capital was Hatti. Another major city was named Hattusa, and one of the king's name was Hattusili. The Elephant fraternity, which reached the eastern Mediterranean coast, named their settlements Goju. 2 of these territories are now known as Gaza Strip and Giza in Lower Egypt. Elephant fraternity was possibly referred to as Kiratha fraternity in the ancient Indian texts. Several powerful fraternities who ruled India used elephant as their royal symbol. These included the Mauryan Empire, as we find an elephant image on top of the Ashoka edict at Dhauli. It is even possible to trace these 9 matriarchal fraternities in Egypt. I've seen an image where 9 women are seen standing in a row who were associated with Naga, lion, and several such animals. I thought that these concepts depicted the Navonari Kunjara concept of India. It is possible that these 9 deities were known as Navadurga and are still worshipped as 9 deities during the Navaratri festival. It is interesting when we analyze an ancient map of the Eastern Mediterranean coast. Here we find Hatti fraternity territory or Hittite Empire marked in blue, and Gojo territory, now known as Gaza Strip and Giza of Lower Egypt, marked in yellow, forming a continuous powerful ethnopolitical zone. Now there are several countries in the region, but during ancient times, this entire region was Indian origin Gojo or Hathi fraternity settlement, and thus they could establish a continuous ethnic and cultural corridor. Now let me give you an idea about the fusion fraternities which formed all over the world. In all possibility, they represented an allied force when two or more fraternities preferred to unite to form a stronger mixed community, which helped them to survive better and often dominate a region. Fusion animal images are seen both in India and abroad. Many fusion fraternities are common in both regions, like the winged lion. I've seen animal images all over the world in various forms, as I visited Egypt for this specific purpose, I could identify these Indian origin animal symbols there. I'm sharing a few images to elaborate on this issue. Sphinx looked like a manifestation of Durga, as I have explained before. In India, we find the Bahun and the deity, although always together, are shown independently. On the other hand, in the Egyptian civilization, more often than not, the feature of the deity and that of the animal associate can be seen blended together. One of the most prominent features of the Narmet palette is a fusion animal image where physical features of three animals were blended to form a complex, unnatural animal image. The head of a lion or tiger has a long neck like that of a naga and a typical body shape of that of a langur or Hanuman. These three animal symbols were adopted by three Indian origin fraternities who migrated to Egypt at an early period. As these artifact is associated with the union of Upper and Lower Egypt to form United Egyptian Empire, it establishes that Indian origin fraternities played an important role in establishing Egyptian civilization and empire. I'm repeating this because it is extremely important to establish that Indian origin fraternities established the Egyptian civilization. Naga and the avian fraternities forming a united fraternity. Winged lion is seen in India as well as in Egypt and possibly in ancient Greece. They are seen in the archaeological structures of Egypt and Greece. In India, they were created till very recently. This is a very common and prominent image that can be seen in front of many temples of Egypt. Here, two Naga images are seen protecting a central disk from either side. This composite symbol is placed on a bed of fish scale and avian feathers. The central disk possibly represented Indian knowledge bank, and these are the three Indian origin fraternities, Naga, Fish, and Avians, who were responsible for these temple complexes and spreading of Indian knowledge in the Egyptian civilization. A falcon image is considered as the associate of Horus, which is strikingly similar to Gadura, the Vahun of our Hori or Vishnu. Thus, it can be conjectured that Hori of India with his Vahun Gadura manifested in Egypt as Horus with his associate falcon. A row of a fusion animal is seen in front of the Karnak temple. This animal has the head of a ram and the body of a lion. It holds the image of King Ramesses II under its chin. These suggest that Ramesses dynasty acquired its name from Ram, the fraternity which provided strength to the kingdom, and the king along with the lion fraternity. I'd seen an image in the Abu Simbel temple in Egypt where a lion is seen accompanying the king Ramesses II. Here, clearly, the lion image represents the participation of the lion fraternity in the war because lions were not otherwise considered as useful war animals. In the Nubian village, I have seen many families writing crocodile house in front of their house and placing a carcass of crocodile on top of their front door. They're also very fond of keeping this unusual species crocodile as their favorite pet. These possibly suggest that these families belong to the Mogor or crocodile fraternity who adopted crocodile as their ethnic symbol. Many of the other families of the Nubian village drew birds and fish images in front of their houses, associating them with these two Indian origin human fraternities, which adopted this species as their ethnic symbol. In my book, India in Egypt, I've elaborately drawn a map of various animal symbols which had followed various routes to reach Egypt. Many of the Indian origin fraternities entered through the Horn of Africa to form the Upper Egypt Kingdom. On the other hand, many others from the Mediterranean coast reach the Nile Delta, who established the Lower Egypt Kingdom. We find different fraternities represented by various animal symbols entering through two ends of Egypt. Now let me draw your attention towards a few very interesting animal symbols I have seen in the Indian subcontinent. In the first image, we see goddess Ganga protecting the front gate of Kailash temple of Ellora, where Ganga has only fish as her bound. In the second image, captured in the crematorium at the Soti Kundo Shaktipit in Chittagong, Bangladesh, we see Makur, an elephant-headed fish, as the Bahan of goddess Ganga. In the third image, captured in the Talaji Bhavani temple in Kathmandu, Nepal, we find a very complex fusion animal image as the Bahan of the goddess Ganga. Did you have any idea that goddess Ganga had various Bahans at various periods? As different fraternities migrated along river Ganga during the onward and reverse migration periods, each preferred to identify themselves with goddess Ganga. In this Kathmandu goddess Ganga Bahon, we find features of various animals like elephant in the head, peacock and fish in the tail, boar tusk, horse ear, ram horn, and so on. This composite Bahon possibly suggests passage of various matriarchal fraternities along the river Ganga during the matriarchal reverse migration period. In fact, this composite ethnic fraternity formed the Ganga dynasty. This is one of the most elaborate composite animal image I have seen in my life. It appeared to me that it described the historical event of the Gangaridi region depicted in a pre-script mural language. The winged lion here possibly represents the Greek force committed through Megasthenes, who reached Gangaridi in the 3rd century BC. He possibly formed an allied force with the Mauryans, represented by the elephant and horse features in the composite animal image. This allied force eventually managed to destroy an invincible fish fraternity who ruled the Gangaridi region. Here in 2 terracotta blocks, we see tiger hunting scenes from elephant and camel back. Though it can be accepted that a tiger can be hunted from an elephant back, but the same cannot be accomplished from a camel back. I do not know how the archaeologists are interpreting these 2 terracotta images. Generally, they are mentioned as hunting scenes, which is confusing and quite a non-specific term. We have to analyze these images more critically. Is it logically acceptable? If not, then we have to revise our interpretations. I feel that these animals actually represent various human fraternities, and these encounters depict their ethnic territorial conflicts. This image depicts arrival of Bojo or elephant and camel fraternities from Arabia, which overpowered the indigenous tiger fraternity politically, ethnically, and on the religious front in the present-day Bangladesh region. Durga family image of Bengal portrays each deity having specific complexion. Saraswati white, Asura green, and Durga, Lakshmi, and Kartik in yellow complexion. Only now I realize that in Bengal, the folk art compiles so many allegorical pre-script language. Each reverse migration territory were identified by specific color. While blue, black, and yellow represented India, red represented Red Sea region or Egypt, green Persia, and white Europe. This color code is also a pre-script period language developed by the Indians, where each color represented a specific region of the world. Bengal art has preserved this ancient color code to a large extent as reflected in their Durga family image. It is our responsibility to establish this animal symbol language at the global level and claim that it was the Indian origin fraternities which spread in the rest of the world and established other ancient civilizations. I have done my part and established the idea. I have discussed the entire process meticulously in my book titled India in Egypt. It is extremely difficult to follow the process unless you see the maps and form an idea about the migration paths followed by various Indian origin fraternities. These animal symbols have remained unnoticed, undiscussed, and unexplained for a long time. Nobody ever attempted to arrange them in a meaningful manner. I thought that it is possible to arrange them in an organized manner. They are not available in the library materials and thus do not form a part of our syllabus. Here, as I've shown you, is a huge possibility of introducing a new subject that has enormous potential for research. I sincerely hope that all of you would take interest in this new and highly fascinating subject. Thank you and Jai Hind.
I have one or two questions. So, sir, you happened to mention regarding, I remember one of the symbols of serpent. It was there a part of forest dwellers also, as well as fishermen community. So, did you also find it frequently that more than one symbol has been used by multiple communities? And did that make your research more interesting or challenging to identify what is the context of a particular image in a particular region?
See, this Naga image is the most important animal image we find in our civilization. You know, Naga image is associated with Kali, with Durga, with Shiva, with Vishnu. I personally think that this was the primary fraternity which reached distant lands, and it was this fraternity which was holding the Indian knowledge bank. You know, they were like, you have seen that image, that two Nagas protecting the central disc. I feel that disc is equivalent to Kumbho. You know, Kumbho is the extract of the Indian knowledge bank. I mean, the elixir inside, you know, and that is the container, all right. But that contained the Amrito. Amrito is the elixir extracted. Well, we find these Naga images at random in Egyptian civilization. Why only Egyptian civilization? I have just come back from Jordan and from Israel. Even in Jordan, I mean, we will elaborate further about other findings which are there in the Mediterranean coast in my next book. Here I'm concentrating only in Egypt. And if you go to Egypt, you won't be able to take a photograph almost everywhere in Egypt without a Naga. So Naga probably at the early stage, this fraternity played a very important role, and many of the fraternities are descendants. That is, at a later date when they, I mean, bifurcated or they reached in specific territories, they adopted other animal symbol, but Naga is the primary symbol. So, and as you know, that Naga, we find snakes or serpents both in water and in land. So this was included when they traveled. I mean, when they formed on the coastal areas, Nagas were there, and when they traveled through the land, also Nagas could be. I mean, they adopted a symbol considering all these factors. You know, they adopted elephant symbol when they considered that this is going to be a very powerful, physically powerful community. You know, so that I mean, so all these symbols were adopted considering their characteristics. So Naga was, I personally feel that was one of the primary fraternity which migrated and which was responsible for holding the Indian knowledge bank, and that is why it is related with all the deities which has formed over a period of time.
Very interesting, sir. So I have one more question. So in Jainism, if we explore the Murti of Tirthankaras, there is usually a symbol at the bottom which helps us identify the Murti or Pratima. So do you think there is some relation, and how?
Absolutely. You are answering your, now you have come up in Hinduism with almost every deity we have an associate or a Bahun. Same thing happens to Buddhism, that these particular fraternities are more fond of Buddhism. And in your case, each fraternity, let us say represented by animal fraternity, they had their leaders and they are eventually accepted as your Tirthankas. You know, I am not really an authority on Jainism, But it appears that each Tirthankar is associated with an animal symbol, probably because, like the deities of Hinduism, that lion fraternity will promote their deity, incidentally, which is Durga. So ram fraternity will promote Agni, and then elephant fraternity, they had few of the, like Vishwakarma is elephant, then Indra is elephant. They have elephant as their bahun, but there is a catch. Indra is a reverse migration identity, so that is why Indra has white elephant Oirabat as his associate or bahun, whereas Vishwakarma has Indian elephant as their bahun, because Vishwakarma is the Indian architect. He could create anything in the world, and he had exceptional skill. So this Hathi fraternity or elephant fraternity had that characteristic. So these bahuns were possibly a fraternity, and the deities were the followers. A fraternity followed a particular deity, so that deity got associated with that bahun. That is my interpretation.
But so very interestingly, as you said that the Vahan of goddess Durga is lion, whereas in Jainism, the symbol of Lord Mahavira is a lion. So the maternal and paternal.
Yes. Now you are coming. You have started to analyze what I have said. You have to keep in mind that over a period, matriarchal community transformed into patriarchal culture, and then in Hinduism also we have goddesses as well as gods, and then cow is associated with so and so, bull is associated with so and so. Now everything will start falling into place. Now it was such a big challenge to actually draw this flow chart, because this is a global phenomena. These animal symbol going, transforming, coming back, changing from matriarchal to patriarchal is a global phenomena. Almost every such day has to fit into this chart. So I had real whether to, but though there is a scope of further tuning this. It is not that I have my skeleton is foolproof. This is the initial chart. I'm giving an idea that it is possible. This is a language. We have to decode this. In fact, as I have mentioned, unless we decode this, we will neither be able to understand Indus Valley civilization codes, nor we will be able to understand Rig Veda's description properly, because almost in every Sukta in Rig Veda there is mention of animal symbol, and the color of the animal symbol changes, and the matriarchal and patriarchal, like the cow and bull, Brisho and Gavi, these changes indicate matriarchal and patriarchal shift. So that is there in Rig Veda also, and that is there in Indus Valley. Indus Valley is full of animal symbols. Every seal of Indus Valley will have some animal symbol. But if we don't know what is the meaning of this animal symbol, how can we decode this sort of Indus Valley script?
Very true, sir. So is it safe to say that with the passage of time, probably the patriarchal and matriarchal fraternities somewhere got mingled also, or probably they got merged? And probably it has to do with the characteristic of the god or goddess, which led them to adopt a particular symbol.
Of course. What you see in India has adopted both, and they are happily living together. Somebody is the same family is worshipping goddess and gods, and in the Indian culture they are blended so nicely that we do not have this conflict between matriarchal and patriarchal. They are in our civilization and culture, they are blended very, very harmoniously.